The city of Seattle thrummed with its usual energy as the early morning sun cast a warm glow over the streets. In the heart of downtown, Ember and Oak stood proud, an exclusive restaurant known for its refined dishes and an atmosphere of quiet elegance. Inside the kitchen was a world of intense focus, with chefs moving like clockwork, each aware of the high stakes tonight. A private event was scheduled. Food critics from prestigious publications, including the New York Times, would soon fill the dining room. Every dish had to be flawless. Executive Chef Nathan Rivers was the undisputed king of this kingdom. Tall and impeccably dressed in his crisp white chef's coat, Nathan's sharp jawline and confident posture commanded attention. His voice cut through the kitchen like a knife, orders sharp and unyielding. To him, the kitchen was a battlefield and every dish was a mission to conquer. He demanded excellence and he expected his team to deliver without question. Yet this morning, something unusual stirred in the rhythm of Ember and Oak's kitchen. A woman stepped inside with no fanfare, no entourage, and no grand announcement. She carried no celebrity status or loud presence, just a quiet confidence. Auburn hair tied back in a simple ponytail, wearing plain black pants and a white shirt. She looked like any other hopeful cook seeking her chance in the culinary world. Her name was Anna Collins, she said when asked. Nothing more. She blended into the backdrop of clattering pots and sizzling pans unnoticed by most. But beneath that calm exterior was a story untold, a past rich with triumph and silence. No one in the kitchen could have guessed the truth. Nathan barely glanced at her resume, his mind too consumed with the upcoming event. Prep station, he muttered dismissively. Vegetables, don't screw it up. It was a test wrapped in dismissal. He didn't expect much from the quiet newcomer. Anna nodded, a soft smile on her lips, grateful for the opportunity. Dear her, this was more than a job. It was a journey back to the kitchen she had once loved. Years ago, she was Elena Collins, a name that echoed through Parisian fine dining circles with reverence. Head chef of the legendary La Flamme, she had earned 3 Michelin stars, her dishes celebrated as masterpieces that touched hearts and souls. Her beef Wellington was more than a dish. It was an experience, a delicate balance of flavors and textures, so perfect it moved people to tears. But after years under the spotlight, the pressure and demands had worn her down. The flame that once burned bright inside her had dimmed. 2 years ago, Elena vanished from the culinary world, leaving fans and critics stunned. Now under the guise of Anna, she sought something different. She wasn't here to reclaim fame or chase awards. She wanted to rediscover the pure joy of cooking, the kind that existed before the crowds, before the noise. No press, no flashing cameras, just food and heart. As the kitchen hummed around her, Anna moved with practiced grace. She chopped, stirred, and prepared her station, each movement a quiet declaration that she belonged here, even if no one else knew why. Meanwhile, Nathan's attention remained fixed on the upcoming challenge. His pride wouldn't allow him to acknowledge any threat, especially from a newcomer like Anna. But as the day wore on and preparations intensified, little did he know that this quiet woman was about to shake the very foundation of Ember and Oak's kitchen, and perhaps teach him a lesson about humility, passion, and the true art of cooking. The day moved swiftly toward evening, and the kitchen at Ember and Oak grew more electric with anticipation. Nathan Rivers paced the floor like a general preparing for battle, his mind consumed with every detail of the night's service. The VIP guests, a select group of food critics known for their discerning palates and harsh judgments, were soon to arrive. This was Nathan's moment to shine, to prove once again that he was the undisputed master of this kitchen. Meanwhile, Anna worked silently at her station, peeling and slicing vegetables with a practiced hand. She stayed in the background listening and learning, her eyes taking in the choreography of the kitchen. Though she seemed unassuming, her years of experience had honed her senses to detect the slightest imbalance in flavor, the smallest imperfection in technique. Every detail mattered to her, not because of pressure or pride, but because she still loved the craft deeply. Suddenly, a commotion near the meat station caught the attention of the entire kitchen. One of Nathan's trusted sous chefs had fallen, ill, unable to complete the preparation of the signature beef Wellington, the very dish Nathan had built his reputation on. A murmur of concern spread among the staff. The Wellington was the centerpiece of the evening, and without it the entire event risked disaster. Nathan's eyes locked onto Anna, the newest and least experienced member of his team. "Cook the beef Wellington," he said sharply, voice like thunder. The kitchen fell silent. Everyone knew the difficulty of the task, the timing, the precision, the delicate balance required to make it perfect. For a line cook, this was near impossible. Anna felt the weight of the moment, but instead of hesitation, a quiet resolve settled over her. She glanced at Nathan and nodded, her calm smile unwavering. No one knew that this dish was once her masterpiece, an intimate expression of her passion and skill. To her, this was not just a challenge, it was an opportunity to remind herself why she fell in love with cooking in the first place. As Anna moved to the meat station, the kitchen's rhythm seemed to shift. There was a collective holding of breath as knives sliced through tender fillets of beef. Mushrooms were finely chopped for the duxelles, and pastry was carefully rolled to golden perfection. She worked with a quiet confidence born from years of practice, each step executed flawlessly despite the pressure. Around her, whispers began to spread. How could this humble woman, barely noticed before, command such skill and grace? The other cooks exchanged glances, some skeptical, some intrigued. Nathan's jaw tightened, pride mixing with doubt. Could she truly deliver? Time became the enemy as plates needed to leave the kitchen in perfect synchronization. Anna's mind focused solely on the dish, the searing of the beef to the exact temperature, the layering of flavors, the delicate wrapping in buttery pastry. This was no longer about proving something to Nathan or the critics. It was about reclaiming a part of herself she had thought lost forever. When the Wellington emerged from the oven golden and steaming, Anna carefully plated it with an artistry that made even Nathan pause. The kitchen watched in stunned silence as the dish was carried out to the dining room. As the guests took their first bites, the room seemed to hold its breath. Then the murmurs began, soft at first, then growing louder. Faces lit with surprise and delight. Forks hesitated mid-air, then returned to mouths again and again. The harmony of flavors, the perfect balance of textures, the subtle yet profound complexity. It was as if the dish was telling a story, one that touched something deep within each diner. Nathan stood frozen, a storm of emotions crossing his face. Pride, confusion, awe. He had underestimated Anna, and in doing so he had been humbled by a woman he thought he barely noticed. Behind the scenes, Anna's eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. She had answered the challenge not just with skill, but with heart. Tonight she was not just a line cook or an unknown applicant. She was a master quietly reclaiming her love for the kitchen, one unforgettable dish at a time. The dining room buzzed softly with a mixture of surprise and admiration. The guests, many of whom were seasoned food critics, exchanged glances that carried unspoken praise. Plates were nearly empty, and the few lingering bites were savored with reverence. At the center of it all, Nathan Rivers stood motionless, the weight of the moment settling heavily on his shoulders. Back in the kitchen, Anna moved with quiet grace, washing her hands and preparing for the next service. Yet beneath her composed exterior, her heart was pounding. The dish had been her secret, a memory from another life when passion ruled over pressure, and every meal was a story told from the soul. But now the world was watching, even if only for a moment. Nathan approached her, his sharp eyes searching hers. The stern lines on his face softened, replaced by a mix of curiosity and reluctant respect. "Who are you, really?" he asked, his voice low but urgent, a question that carried more weight than any order he had barked before. Anna paused. Slowly, she reached up and loosened the tie holding her ponytail, letting her auburn hair fall free around her shoulders. With a small, knowing smile, she revealed a delicate pin that gleamed softly under the kitchen lights. It bore the name La Flamme. Gasps rippled through the staff as realization dawned. Elena Collins. The name was whispered reverently. A legend, who had once ruled the culinary world with a fearless heart and unparalleled talent. Her disappearance had left a void, a silence filled with questions and unspoken stories. Elena met Nathan's gaze steadily. "I'm not here to compete," she said quietly, "but to remind you, and everyone, that cooking isn't about ego or power. It's about passion, humility, and the joy of creating something that connects people." The kitchen felt different now, the tension replaced by a newfound respect. Elena's story began to unfold, her voice calm and steady as she shared the journey that had brought her here. The years of triumph, the moments of doubt and burnout, and the decision to step away from the spotlight to rediscover what truly mattered. Nathan listened, his usual arrogance tempered by the honesty in her words. For the first time, he saw cooking not as a battlefield, but as a craft that required heart and soul. Elena's presence was a reminder that greatness could be quiet, that sometimes the most profound strength was found in humility. As the night wore on, Elena stayed by Nathan's side, offering guidance and encouragement to the kitchen staff. Her experience and kindness transformed the atmosphere, turning a high-pressure evening into a shared celebration of food and creativity. For Elena, this was more than a return to the kitchen. It was a healing, a rediscovery of the love that had once ignited her passion. And for Nathan, it was a lesson in respect and the true meaning of mastery. That night, Ember and Oak was not just a restaurant. It was a place where stories intertwined with flavor, where the past and present met on a plate, and where the quietest voices sometimes carried the most powerful messages. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in Ember and Oak began to shift. It was subtle at first, less tension in the air, fewer harsh commands echoing off the tiled walls, more collaboration in the corners of the kitchen. The staff noticed it. They couldn't quite explain the change, but it felt like the soul of the place had been stirred. And at the heart of that transformation was the quiet woman who had cooked a single dish that still had people talking. Elena, still known to most of the team as Anna, didn't seek recognition. She arrived early, helped clean, sharpened knives without being asked, and guided the younger cooks with gentle suggestions instead of harsh corrections. She wasn't trying to take over. She was simply present, in every task, every plate, every quiet moment between the chaos. And slowly, those around her began to mirror her calm precision, her unspoken pride in doing things the right way. Nathan watched it all from a distance. He hadn't mentioned the Wellington since that night, nor had he confronted Elena again about her identity, but something inside him was unsettled. For so long, he had built his authority on confidence and control. Now, he felt the foundations of his leadership quietly shifting. His staff respected him, yes, but there had always been fear in their eyes too. With her, it was different. They listened to her, learned from her, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. One afternoon, when the restaurant was closed and the kitchen was unusually quiet, Nathan approached her. The stainless steel surfaces gleamed under the warm light, and for a rare moment the kitchen wasn't a battlefield. It was just a room. "I've spent a long time trying to be the best," he said, not looking at her at first. "Trying to prove I deserved to be here. I thought that meant controlling everything, everyone." Elena looked up from the herbs she was sorting but said nothing, sensing he needed space to find his words. "But the way you cook, it's not just about skill. It's something else. There's peace in it." He finally turned to her. "How did you find that again, after walking away from all of it?" She paused, then spoke with the quiet certainty of someone who had lived both triumph and loss. "I lost myself when I started chasing perfection for other people. Awards, fame, expectations, they became louder than my own voice. When I stepped away, it wasn't easy. But in the silence, I started remembering why I cooked in the first place. It wasn't about stars or critics. It was about the way food brings people together, heals, speaks when words fail." Nathan leaned back against the counter, letting her words settle in the stillness. For the first time, he realized how heavy the chef's coat had become over the years, not just with responsibility but with pride, with pressure, with fear of not being enough. And somehow, without preaching or demanding, Elena had reminded him of the simple, honest joy that had started him on this path. Later that week, he gathered the kitchen staff after service. Instead of the usual post-shift critique, he stood in front of them with something different in his voice, humility. "I owe you all something," he began, "and I owe our guest chef even more." He turned toward Elena, finally acknowledging her openly. "Most of you don't know who she really is, and I think that's because she didn't come here to be seen. She came to help us remember why we're here." The staff turned toward her, confused but curious. "Elena Collins," he said simply. The silence that followed was thick with disbelief and wonder. Even those who hadn't followed the culinary world closely knew the name, and for those who had stood beside her every day, learning quietly without realizing it, the revelation hit even harder. But Elena didn't bask in the moment. She smiled, humble as ever. "I'm still learning too," she said. "Every day. From all of you." And somehow that was the most powerful thing she could have said. Winter crept into the city, its chill brushing against the windows of ember and oak while warmth flourished inside, not just from the ovens but from something far less tangible. Respect, camaraderie, purpose. The kitchen had grown into a space of curiosity and quiet pride. The change hadn't come from new recipes or renovations, it had come from her. Elena moved like she belonged, yet always with the grace of someone who didn't take it for granted. The staff, once guarded and cautious, now opened up around her. They sought her advice not because of her past, but because of her presence. She didn't flaunt knowledge. She invited questions. She didn't command. She inspired. Still, Elena knew she couldn't remain a secret forever. Whispers had already made their way beyond the kitchen. Rumors that the woman preparing sauces with perfect balance and correcting knife techniques with a gentle nudge was none other than the lost star of fine dining herself. One morning she received a letter slipped under her prep station, a request for an exclusive interview from a well-known food journalist who had once written glowing reviews of La Flamme. It was unsigned, but the tone was unmistakable. They knew. Elena folded the letter and tucked it away. She wasn't hiding anymore, but she wasn't ready for the spotlight either. Not yet. That evening, Nathan stood beside her as they reviewed the next week's menu. He had changed too. He spoke less, listened more. He'd begun rotating in younger chefs, letting them experiment. Mistakes were met with feedback, not fury. He was still exacting, still driven, but no longer driven by ego. As they debated plating techniques, a young chef named Danny shyly approached. "Chef Elena," she said, hesitating, "would you mind showing me how you made the jus reduction yesterday? I couldn't get it quite right." Elena smiled and set aside the menu. "Let's do it together." The two moved to the stove, with Nathan quietly observing from afar. He watched as Elena guided Danny's hand, explaining each step not with technical jargon, but with simple sensory details. What to listen for, how the aroma should shift, when the color changes just enough to tell you it's ready. There was magic in it, but not the kind that needed tricks, just care. Later that night, when the rush of service had ended and only the hum of the refrigeration units remained, Elena stood alone in the walk-in cooler, resting her head against a box of herbs. She felt the quiet again, the same kind that had followed her when she walked away from her old life. Only now it wasn't loneliness. It was peace. But peace didn't mean standing still. She walked into Nathan's office after midnight. He looked up, surprised to see her still there. "I think it's time," she said simply. "For the world to know?" he asked. "No," she replied with a smile. "For us to do something with this, for the people who've never been given a chance to cook, for the kids who grow up thinking kitchens are places of yelling, not learning. For the ones who cook to survive but never dare to dream. I want to teach, not just here, everywhere. Nathan leaned back, absorbing her words. A culinary school? Something different, she said. Not a school with uniforms and tuition. A space. A community. Mobile, maybe. Reach the people. No one thinks about. Let them find what I lost and what I found again. He nodded slowly. You're serious? She looked at him, steady as ever. Completely. He smiled. Really smiled for the first time in a long while. Then let's build it. Outside, the city shimmered under the cold glow of winter lights. But inside that small office, something had begun to stir. A new dream, planted quietly, but deeply rooted. Not just a comeback. A mission. And Elena knew with every part of her that this time she wouldn't be walking away. Spring unfolded like a breath held too long. The frost lifted, and with it, something shifted in the rhythm of the city. Elena stood in a sunlit courtyard behind Ember and Oak, surrounded by folding tables, borrowed burners, and half a dozen teenagers who didn't know a julienne from a sauté, and that was exactly the point. What had begun as a quiet idea whispered in the back of a kitchen had grown roots, not in the form of brick and mortar, but something mobile and alive. With Nathan's support and the backing of a few silent investors, who believed in Elena's vision, they launched the Hearth Project, a traveling kitchen workshop aimed at underserved communities, schools, and shelters. No requirements, no resumes, just curiosity and a hunger to learn. The first event was rough around the edges. One of the burners refused to light. A box of onions had gone soft. A student burned a roux and burst into tears. But Elena simply wiped. Her hands crouched beside the young girl and said gently, "Burnt is part of learning. The trick is not to panic. You just start over, and maybe stir a little slower this time." Laughter came cautiously, then freely. The pressure was gone. No expectations, no perfection, only growth. Nathan, who had insisted on handling the logistics and running the back end of the project, watched from the sidelines. He wasn't the same man who had once led Ember and Oak like a tyrant in whites. He had learned humility, not as a punishment, but as a gift. He no longer felt threatened by excellence. He wanted to nurture it. One afternoon, as they were packing, up the portable kitchen in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city, a boy no older than 12 lingered, staring at Elena with wide eyes. "Do you really have those stars?" he asked. She smiled. "I did." "Why'd you stop?" he asked, his voice small. "I forgot why I started," she said. "But I remembered, thanks to people like you." He didn't respond right away, but before leaving, he picked up a spatula and whispered, "I want to cook like you one day." "You'll cook like you," she said, "and that'll be even better." Word spread quickly. Articles appeared, not about her past glories, but about what she was doing now, bringing dignity, skill, and a sense of possibility to people who had never been invited into the world of cuisine. Not for show, for life. One day, Elena received an envelope from Paris. No return address, just a note inside. "You disappeared, and in doing so, you returned stronger than any of us ever did. La Flamme misses you, but the world needed you more. Keep going." She folded the letter slowly, held it for a moment, then placed it in a drawer alongside the very first menu she had ever written back when she was just 21, and dreaming in sauces and spices. At Ember and Oak, things changed, too. The restaurant didn't become more famous because of Elena's presence. It became more human. The staff laughed more, dishes told stories, and Nathan, now both chef and co-director of the Hearth Project, found a new legacy, one that didn't hang on stars but on people. In time, Elena spoke at conferences, not as a returning legend, but as a teacher of transformation. Her talks weren't about her awards or her past. They were about failure, about walking away, about the courage it takes to start again, not on top of the mountain but from the bottom, with your hands in the dirt and your heart still open. In quiet corners of the city, new kitchens opened in libraries, community centers, and parks. And, in every one, Someone who once thought they didn't belong in a kitchen now stood tall, flipping omelets, slicing herbs, plating food, not for approval, but for joy. Elena never went back to La Flamme. She didn't need to. Her masterpiece wasn't a dish anymore. It was this: the ripple of change, the second chances given, the lives touched by something as simple and sacred as a shared meal. And sometimes, late at night, when the world was still, she'd return to Ember and Oak, tie her apron and cook something just for herself. No audience, no pressure. Just for the love of it. Because she had learned, finally and fully, that the kitchen wasn't where you proved yourself. It was where you found yourself.